Lynched on CTV, proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88 at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled. Good evening. It's Christchurch's biggest election issue, but have any of the parties actually offered a decent policy to ease the city's housing crisis? Tonight we'll examine what's on offer and discuss some solutions. And Lynched starts right now. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, affordable housing, rising rents, out of control red tape are all major issues for Christchurch as the city tries to get back on its feet. The main parties are offering a variety of policies to grab your vote when it comes to the housing crisis, but do they actually offer any real solutions? Well, to discuss this is journalist David Killick and author of the annual Demographia International Housing Affordability Survey, Hugh Pavlich. And good evening to you both.
Hi, Chris.
David, let me start with you. There's always been a housing crisis in this city. You say even before the earthquakes. The only difference is the earthquakes have accelerated the issue.
It's always been a big issue, I think, the housing affordability. People struggling to afford their first homes has been a big issue that's been going on for at least the last 20 years. And what's happened, the earthquakes have come along and a whole lot of suburbs obviously are not there anymore. People have had to move out. But really this has pushed the problem to a crisis point. And this is what we're facing in Christchurch now. And so far, it's only been getting worse and we're needing solutions.
Hugh Pavlich, let me play devil's advocate with you for one moment. Is the reason why housing remains so unaffordable in this city is simply because it's a guaranteed investment in the first place?
No, it's not so much even thinking of it in terms of investment or whatever. We don't think of it in terms of investment. All we have to do is look at what it currently costs, and we know that it costs about 6 times household incomes, and that in normal affordable markets they shouldn't be paying any more than 3 times incomes. And when all we do, Chris, is follow the numbers to ascertain what the problems and solutions are. And quite clearly, it is land supply and infrastructure financing. We do not have enough affordable land.
I want to come back to that later in the program, but David, you talk about how this has come to the forefront now following the earthquakes. So what's changed, what's different, and why is housing so expensive in Christchurch and in Auckland? Is it simply about population growth, or is that too simplistic?
I think there are lots of reasons, and it's a bit hard to actually pinpoint why it's happened. This is what he's been talking about, the land supply, and I'm sure that is probably a good part of that. But just to look back at the affordability, 20 years ago, when I got my first house, and we're lucky we got a house in Christchurch, but it was about 2 to 3 times one person's annual income. So that's the late 1980s, looking at that. And now it's gone up, we'd be something like almost, well, more than that for us. It's probably up to 8 or 9 times as much. And the average person would have to be earning something like $200,000 and now to be able to afford a house. So this has happened regardless of the earthquakes. And we're seeing this problem now because people have lost their homes. They've got a payout, which may be $200,000 perhaps in parts of the eastern suburbs. There's no way they're going to afford to be able to replace a house to the same level that they had before.
So guys, why is it, do you think then, that our salaries have not risen with the cost of housing in this country? And this is a worldwide trend, isn't it? In some cases, not all, but some.
It is a worldwide trend. So that's been happening. Here we'll have more details on that in Australia. There are only a few parts in the world, like North America, I'm talking about Texas, where they've actually remained perhaps 2 or 3 times the level.
And that's quite remarkable in itself, isn't it? Because we're talking populations that far exceed Christchurch or Auckland.
Exactly.
To me, that doesn't make sense. Why then has it worked in places like Texas then and not in Christchurch and Auckland?
Well, I'll explain that, Chris. What they haven't been doing, and not only in Texas, this is all the way through middle North America, and people should check out the Demographia housing surveys, and it's all staring them in the face that they're paying 2 to 3 times household incomes to buy their homes there, simply because land is being made available for new housing, affordable land, and infrastructure is financed properly. It is really that simple.
Is it that simple, David?
I don't think it is that simple. Why it stayed that low in other parts, it may have something to do with the land supply, but what's happening here, and I've spoken to this World Bank former planner, and he was very interesting, Alan Berteau, and he did agree that the land supply is the issue. But then I've heard from Jerry Brownlee, and he's saying, well, okay, we are actually releasing some new sections over the next 10, 14 years, be something like an extra 40,000 sections across Greater Christchurch. Within the next 3 years, he's saying we'll get 10,000 more new homes. So they are doing something, but it's still going to be very pricey. So I'm not sure if the land supply is the whole story. There are other factors too. There's the cost of building. Building materials are very expensive. And I just think it's very tough, as you say, that people's incomes have not matched that rise.
Hugh, does David make a point? I mean, it's all very well to release more land and build more houses, but there is still absolutely no incentive for developers or those who supply the building materials to drop their prices. So it's all very well to release more land around the fringes of Christchurch, but are we then going to see a dramatic decrease in the cost of housing? Isn't the answer no?
Yeah. Well, we've got a saying in the development business, you get the land price wrong, everything else is wrong. And now what has happened, and this is very important to understand this, and people have really got to try and think it through, is that when the markets were normal 20 and 30 years ago, our build rates used to just oscillate very moderately, okay? And they used to oscillate between 5 to 7 units per 1,000 population per annum, and I'm using a technical term in the development industry, okay? But since that time, what they've done is they've plummeted, and we're getting these far greater oscillations. What that has done, it's wrecked the production industry and the disciplines in the industry, and it's reverted back to the old cottage-style builders. And we don't actually have production builders left in New Zealand now. The ones that you deal with, who you think they are, they're really marketeers who are simply clipping the ticket and getting
What do you mean by production builders?
A production builder is a fellow who's got an organisation all organised to go and put in 10, 20, 50,000, 50 homes in a row.
Are we talking cookie cutter?
Oh no, not necessarily
homes?
Cookie cutter, because they could be, it's called tract housing or production housing. But those guys have all gone they've gone from the market. They were the trendsetters as far as setting prices. Now, to give you some idea on construction, what you're paying, say, $1,700 per square metre for here in Christchurch for construction costs, we'd be paying $500 to $600 in America. So that's a massive difference.
It's probably quite a good price. I think it's probably gone up above that. So
yes, that's right. These are figures that I was told today when I was speaking at the Property Institute.
I want to come back and discuss the facts and figures regarding how much it costs to build a house. Stay with us. The Lottie Scramble has already started with Labour and National offering different policies, but how do they actually stack up? Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. My guests tonight are journalist David Killick and author of the International Demographia Housing Affordability Survey, Hugh Pavlich. Hugh, let me start with you. In terms of the buzzwords, we hear all about sustainability, what's the other one, livability and glass boxes, and the Greens want this compact city and all this sort of stuff. It sounds well intended, but it also sounds like a whole lot of rubbish to me.
Well, you're dead right, Chris, and people are beginning to realise that as well. We're very fortunate just recently having Alan Berteau out, who's a very well-known international planner of great experience, and he was the principal urban planner of the World Bank quite a number of years ago as well. Very highly regarded chap. But what we've got to really do is to start getting into factual stuff, and we've got to focus, as Elaine says, on mobility and affordability.
Let me get your take though. What is sustainability though? Is sustainable housing a buzzword, or is there some fact behind that? And what is your interpretation of sustainability?
Well, sustainability to me is really feasibility, but there are so many different definitions of it, and the big thing about it is that you can't really quantify. If you could tell me, what percentage sustainable this is or not, of course we can't do it. But we can quantify things like mobility and affordability. How about just sticking to the facts and the stuff that we can quantify? And they are actually, that's really sustainability in action.
David, what do you make of the whole buzzwords like sustainability and livability? These are the sort of buzzwords that Leanne Dalzell and her friends would come out and say whenever there's a beautiful new, these techie little boxes that are going up in the middle of Christchurch somewhere. Oh, they're going to be great. They look like dolls' houses as far as I'm concerned.
Such as?
Well, I'm trying to think, is it going to be on the corner where the old backpackers used to be? There's going to be a new precinct there.
You're talking about the Breathe project? Perhaps on Latimer Square? This is the international competition that had about 150 entries from around the world. They don't. I think they'd be brilliant, and I think it's just what we need.
Really?
Have a good look at them and see what they're like, because sustainability is a very overworked word, sure.
Yeah.
What it means is we're building an eco-friendly city. Sustainable means that it's going to keep meeting the demands of people for the foreseeable future, into the future. We have to be building an eco-friendly city, and I don't think we can go back to the way we used to build in the past, just building the same old design subdivisions. I don't think that's going to work. So I think that some of those little dolls' houses, as you call them, are actually very clever designs. They're eco-friendly, energy efficient. We should be looking at all of this future-focused design. Will
they be affordable though?
Well, hopefully, if they do things in a different way, so that one family doesn't have a big sprawling house in the suburbs. If you do look at alternatives, we'll look at this more in a bit, I think, but the solutions would include this different design. So you're designing for diverse groups of people. They're sharing some of the landscaping, so that's a big important part of it. Everyone doesn't have their big suburban section anymore. Perhaps they don't need it. So that's one way that they may be more affordable. But yes, it is a big issue because they are still going to be quite pricey, you're right.
And there's nothing wrong with it, is there? If people choose and want to live in the city and pretend they're in a little wee New York, nothing wrong with that, to give them that option, is there?
Not at all.
But your concern is, though, if we restrict the land just to the central, or if we do land restriction, that pushes the price up in the middle.
The two key things that need to be focused on with regard to affordable housing are land supply, making sure there's adequate, affordable land, that we just don't artificially inflate it because we're not providing enough of it. And secondly, that we finance infrastructure properly so that we're getting true, if you like, market value for the land that's provided for people who wish to sort of build their homes in the city, whether it's on the fringes, the central city, wherever. And I'm a great fan of sort of saying getting the basics right so that people can then make their choices how they want to live. They don't need advice from me to tell them how to live. All I want to do is get the structural basics right for them.
Well, guys, let's talk about how some people are choosing to live. They're choosing from Christchurch to go out to areas like Selwyn and Waimakariri. And you say, you've always...
because it's more affordable.
But is that one of the reasons, or is it simply because also, to be fair, that some of those areas sustain less damage than Christchurch City?
It's part of the reason.
Is that part of the reason?
It's not the whole reason, but it's because that's where the houses are. And I'm sure he would agree with that.
Exactly it.
If that is the case, then what is the problem with that, though?
Well, there isn't a problem, except that where are the jobs? Are the jobs out there as well, or are the jobs in the city?
So now we've got this whole issue with the Northern Motorway with congestion, and so now we've got the transport issues then. So nothing wrong with Selwyn or Waimakariri areas, but obviously, as you say, the jobs aren't there.
There's nothing wrong, I think, with developing anywhere around Canterbury and building new towns, but they have to be not just subdivisions where everyone commutes into the central city anymore, but actually building real communities where people can have jobs out there if they want to, and if they need to, they can also commute easily and get around.
Are you concerned that we're not building real communities in areas like North Canterbury where there is that awful traffic lights?
It's a danger that isn't happening. It's just building houses, but it is happening to some extent, and I think some of the developers are looking at more imaginative solutions, more variety of houses, and community facilities. I think all of that's really important.
The major driver too, of course, is that people are looking for more affordable land, and if they have to go out this far to get it, they'll do it. What we should be trying to do is encouraging them to build closer into the city by providing more affordable land closer to the city.
Then why aren't
Instead of spreading them all over the Canterbury Plains.
The
Christchurch Council is very, very slow in providing that, unfortunately. The land is far too expensive. People are paying, say, $250,000 at least for a plot of land, service land on the fringes of cities. They should be paying for a house and land package for that sort of money. That's how distorted
I'm not going
to
doubt your figures, but then the press reported in May, I think, that Christchurch had the most new house or home approvals in 5 years. Doesn't that suggest that things are going okay in Christchurch?
Finally, but it's been a long time coming that the figures have come up to something respectable. But most of the construction, Chris, has really been going on for the last 2-3 years, as we all know, out in the adjoining counties of Waimakariri and Selwyn, where those councils have been really on the ball and processing consents and doing everything right. And that's where people have been going, and people have preferred to build out there because there's a lot less hassles. Whereas Christchurch has been a big problem. They've never really got their act together for a very long time, and they're finally starting to get their numbers up to respectable levels now.
David, is land too expensive in Christchurch City right now?
I think that is a real problem for developers. If several of them have talked to me and said, yeah, it is a problem. We can come up with these good designs, but the land itself is expensive. And there is actually a design issue, as you hinted on before, building out in the Waimakariri area. Well, in the central city, you do have to build for the earthquakes. You have to make them resistant, seismic resistant, so that adds extra cost. So that's another thing they've got to look at.
Well, let's just briefly touch on the central city specifically then, the CCDU, the plan, the green space, you name it. Is that on the right track now? Or is that another way of government control restricting land to push the price up in the middle?
I think it's a good idea, the whole frame idea, and bringing more housing, more people into the city. It's the future of the city, because I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to return to how it was before, where everything was just in that central city area, all the businesses. Many of the businesses have moved out of the city, and once they've gone, the horse is bolted, they're not going to come back. Some of them will, and probably the most expensive kind of commercial developments might go in there, but they've got to have very deep pockets to do that.
Yeah, would you agree with that?
And by and large, I would accept to sort of say it was always a great shame that they'd shut that CBD down for over 2 years, and that drove so many businesses, in my view, unnecessarily out into the suburban areas. So there's been a very long history to this, and I'm not at all very happy with the central blueprint. And myself, I would have much preferred to have sort of seen a far more active response following the earthquakes to try and retain people in there and buildings in there. I understand a lot of these buildings came down for just financial reasons, not seismic reasons too, because they simply couldn't get near them for 2 years.
David, I'll give you the last word on that. You want to say something?
Possibly, I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but I just think that you can't really look back now, we have to look forward, and looking into the central city, making it a more sustainable, eco-friendly environment for people to live, with interesting activities going on. I think that's a great move. We
need to take a break. When we return, let's discuss some of the solutions. Can we actually fix this housing crisis, and are there actually any quick fix solutions? Stay with us. Welcome back to Lynched on CTV. My guests tonight are journalist David Killick and housing commentator Hugh Pavlich. Hugh, I want to just briefly touch on the main political parties' policy. We've got Labour, they've come out and they want to build 100,000 homes in 10 years with their Kiwi Build program. Sounds nice, but it sounds unrealistic, it sounds out of touch. Your quick response to that, please.
I agree.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I don't think either party has all the answers.
Well, you see, National, of course, have come out and said, well, you know, first-time home buyers, no problem. We're going to throw more cash at your KiwiSaver so you can actually afford a lovely home. Problem is, though, is that actually going to bring down the house price? Hugh?
My view is, in general terms, the government is doing the right thing by setting up these accords and actually getting some teeth into them. It really started off with a major announcement by the government back in October of 2012, where the focus was to be on land supply, infrastructure financing, process and construction costs. Those 4 things. And that focus is critically important in addressing these issues. I agree with that whole focus and what's going on ever since, but it needs to be speeded up dramatically. And I'm very pleased, I must say too, to say that the shift that's occurring with the Labour Party and in their thinking as well, understanding the whole supply impediments that we've got, and they're actually sort of talking, in my view, quite a lot of sense now. I would like to sort of even see it evolve where both major parties are agreeing on this thing so we can really drive the whole thing forward.
Let's really hone in and focus on solutions. David, if you were John Key and you had any policy you could dream up to try and solve Christchurch's housing crisis, and it's not going to be pulling out policies saying 10,000 new homes in 10 years or throwing cash at young first home buyers, what is the solution then? No pressure?
I think it's very hard to come up with solutions, obviously. I think some of the things they're doing are on the right track. Releasing more land is a good move. But also it comes back to the design issue that I've been talking about before. We need to think differently. The kind of communities we're building, they need to be in, we need to think where they're going to be. There's plenty of space all over Canterbury. Places like Rolleston was called the town of the future. Some people love living there, and it's developing into more of a community with schools, shops, all of that kind of thing. I think we need to be looking at building more places, subdivisions, communities like that.
Some people would say, particularly the Greens, they're not into urban sprawl. Are they, Hugh?
Well, they're supposedly not into urban sprawl, but actually with their policies of strangling cities, we get, if you like, far greater sprawl because people just go straight out over boundaries.
What do you mean by that? That's a very powerful comment to make, strangling cities. What do you mean by that?
Strangling land supply, driving it up through the roof so that land is too expensive for people to buy in the cities. So what do? And there's a great saying, preference always trumps policy. So they just jump the boundary and they go and establish themselves out in lifestyle blocks in adjoining towns. And so I call it, if you like, planners sprawl. You know, and Christchurch is just sprawled all over the Canterbury Plains.
Can I challenge you on something there, Hugh?
Yes, please do.
You said that it's okay for people to have the choice of what they want. They can live where they like, a townhouse or apartment, but you don't seem to like lifestyle blocks very much.
No, I do. Any type, as long as they're paying true market value for it. And we do know that they're paying far too much for land in the city because they've strangled the supply of it. In broad terms, they're paying about, for raw land, $1 million per hectare more than they should be, above true rural value. That's outside Christchurch. 2 million in Auckland, about $500,000 down in Rolleston. There's artificial values. We've got to get rid of them. So
how do you get rid of the artificial
opening up the supply?
Really though? But haven't we just discussed that opening up the supply is not going to make much of a difference though?
Oh, it will indeed. You increase supply, demand. It's as simple as that. You increase the supply and you'll find that the price will come down. I don't understand though, because what incentive will that be for the developer or the builder to... A greater incentive, because it doesn't suit builders and developers either. They all know that operating in these expensive markets is hugely risky. And let's just say, consider Ireland, for example, where, of course, the bubble burst there. And, OK, they were building 90,000 houses one year, 8,000 the next. 14% unemployment, immigration on a massive scale. They put all their banks down. These bubble prices that we have, like here in Christchurch, are very, very dangerous. So we need to phase them right out over a reasonable time. So the government is on the right path in sort of approaching that, but we can't... you know, we've got to get onto it expeditiously because all we're doing really, if we don't supply affordable land in or near Christchurch, what do people do? They'll just go out to where they can get it.
Yes and no, but also there's the kind of land, what land it is. If it's productive farmland, are we going to lose that? Is that a worry?
That's exactly what they're doing. They're just chewing up farmland. There was a study done out by Lincoln University, this is going back 2 or 3 years, where in the last 13 years, up to I think the end of 2012, the number of lifestyle blocks in New Zealand had exploded from 100,000 out to 175,000. And that's, I think it's increased even faster. And throughout New Zealand, yeah. So,
but there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't.
Want that choice, they should be allowed to.
Could I just say, Chris, as long as it's for good reasons, in other words, they're not being driven out, if you like, because they can't get more affordable land in Christchurch.
Another problem, though, is perhaps the rules and the regulations from the territorial authorities, the councils. Say I wanted to go and build a lifestyle block out somewhere, it'd be absolutely fine. But say I wanted to build an eco-village, nice, friendly, sustainable eco-village, the kind you'd love, and live out there.
I'll be there.
You'll be there straight away. Now, the rules, the council might not let me do that. They'll say, no, this is only zoned for lifestyle blocks. So I think that the councils, the territorial authorities, need to look at alternative solutions.
I agree. Hopefully the council officials are watching this right now. David Killick, thanks so much for coming in. Hugh Pavlich, always nice to see you.
Thank you very much indeed,
Thank you so
Chris.
much for your time. That's our show. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Lynched on CTV was proudly brought to you by Christchurch's #1 dining offer, Sequoia 88, at the Redwood Hotel, a food concept unequalled.